Everybody's household is different. Everybody's season of life is different. Everybody's experiences and problems and challenges are different. Even though we may face some of the same problems and challenges, everybody's is different. So everybody has their own perspective of what good looks like. And another thing, or one thing that I have learned, is that you really don't know what's going on in somebody else's house. You may think that everything looks great, everybody looks happy, but in reality, it's a train wreck. I have learned that. You just don't know. You don't know what's going on inside somebody else's house. And I'm kind of glad I don't know. Sometimes I'm kind of glad. But the reality is that we all make mistakes. We all have challenges. We all have things in our lives that are not our choice. Things just happen to us. And there's different reasons for that, like I said. So we all come with a different perspective on marriage. So what I wanted to kind of focus on tonight was what Proverbs says about marriage. There's a lot about picking a spouse, what you need to look for when you're picking a spouse. I think most of us in here are already past that decision making. So what I wanted to really kind of look at tonight was what is a marriage, right? Where does the foundation start? Where does a good marriage begin? And then I wanted to look at some characteristics of wives, what Proverbs says wives should be, and what Proverbs and other parts of the Bible says what a good husband should be. So anything before we start? Any wisdom? So like I was telling you earlier, I said this class could go one of two ways. We could have a lot of good discussion, or we could all just kind of sit there and not say anything. Especially if you're here together with your spouse, right? But don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to speak up. So for the foundation of a good marriage, right, we read in Psalm 127, verse 1, unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. So I've always thought that in a marriage, in your life, and whatever you do, unless you put God first, whatever you do is going to be in vain. And I think that goes for your marriage as well. So in your marriage, you have to put God first. You have to put God first. Proverbs 24, verses 3 and 4. By wisdom a house is built, and by understanding it is established. By knowledge the rooms are filled with all precious and pleasant riches. So the main thing that we need to focus on in our homes is putting God first. And that's no accident, right? It doesn't just happen by chance that, we just happen to go to church, whenever we can. We just happen to study the Bible. We just happen to pray before we eat. We just happen to always put God first in the decisions. That's no accident. That's no accident. A happy home is more important than the size of the house and all that's in it. Proverbs 15:17. Better is a dinner of herbs where love is there than a fatted ox and hatred within. Also in 17:1. A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. And Luke 11:17 says, every kingdom divided against itself is laid waste, and a divided house falls. So is that not true about marriage as well? If you're not on the same page, your house a lot of times is in turmoil, right? I kind of likened it to a team. And hey, Jeremy's not in here because, he's a coach by trade, but I've done some coaching myself, and I know that if your team does not play together, if you don't get along with each other, it doesn't matter how good your athletes are, you're not going to be successful, right? Team chemistry in winning championships is crucial. I've seen teams with far less talent, but they played together better than a team that has far more talent and didn't play together. I've seen those teams lose and the less talented teams win, right? So I started looking at different coaching philosophies, I guess, and different quotes from some of these coaches that you might recognize. And I thought, those same quotes could apply to marriage as well. So as I read these quotes, think about not what team they were coaching, but think about a husband and wife. Nobody who ever gave his best regretted it. George Halas. You remember George Halas? Coached for who, the Bears? Green Bay? Yeah, he's a good coach. Who? Green Bay? Chicago Bears. I was right first. You don't demand respect, you earn it. And that was Steve Seidler. He was an assistant coach, but I think that still counts because I like the quote. You don't demand respect, you earn it. Nothing great was ever achieved without enthusiasm. Bobby Knight. Y'all know Bobby Knight, right? He threw the chair across the court when he was mad. You remember that? That was great, wasn't it? Nothing will work unless you do. John Wooden, basketball coach. The road to Easy Street goes through the sewer. John Madden. Which I kind of took that to mean, in order to get to Easy Street, sometimes you've got to go through a difficult neighborhood, right? Sometimes you've got to go through some tough times, some difficult challenges, but there is Easy Street just around the corner. All of you may know this guy who said this quote. Never quit. It's the easiest cop-out in the world. Set a goal and don't quit until you attain it. When you attain it, set another goal and don't quit until you reach it. Never quit. Who said that? Yes, he did. Bear Bryant. Bear Bryant. So everybody knows him, right? The only place that success comes before work is in the dictionary. Vince Lombardi. Your problems never cease. They just change. Bill Jackson. Things turn out best for the people who make the best out of the way things turn out. John Wooden. I had to read that a couple times because I'm kind of slow. Things turn out best for people who make the best of the way things turn out, right? So if you have a positive attitude, if you had a positive outlook, if you're enthusiastic, if you work hard, what's your marriage going to look like? It'll reflect that, right? So I thought those quotes from those coaches could apply to marriage as well. Also, I think when you're talking about a team, as a player on a team, you always ask the coach, hey, coach, what can I do better? How can we make this team better? And you know what I would always tell the players? Is that you make yourself better. When you practice and you start making yourself better, you're going to make the team better. I think the same thing's in marriage, right? Any comments on that? Just the whole concept of marriage, anything? Before we get into other stuff. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Right. And there are everybody faces different circumstances, but I think something that you said early um, was that it's hard work. I mean, it is hard work being married. I feel like I have a very happy marriage. Um, my part is pretty easy. I feel like my part's pretty easy. For Laura, I think sometimes it may seem like work for her. And I mean, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but it's just because men are so different than women. Women have different needs. They're much more emotional. Men are just more, I don't know, simple, goal driven. No, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but the point that I think Will was making that I want to kind of bring it back to is that it's work sometimes. Even though you may look at somebody like, like whoever who's been married 30 years, 40 years, or whatever, and you think, man, they've got just a happy marriage. It must be just so easy for them. The reality is it may not have been. It may not have been that easy for them. So you just don't know. And again, that's why I kind of say you don't know what's going on in somebody else's house. You don't know what other people have been through or what they're going through now. But what I do think we can do is look at these characteristics of wives. And the way that I wanted to kind of, I guess, have this class is not necessarily point fingers and say, I want my spouse to be this way or this way or this way. I want to look at it as like, as a husband, how can I be better? What can I do to make my team better? And as a wife, you can look at these characteristics that we're going to talk about and you can think, what can I do to make my team better as a wife? So I'm not trying to be, pointing fingers or critical or whatever, because the reality is we're all imperfect. And even if you have a happy marriage and you're great and everything's wonderful, you can still work hard and you can still get better. Anything else? Anybody going to bail me out on that one? Philip, did I recover? Did I? Thank you. Okay, so let's look at wives, right? The wives have the power to build up or tear down. Proverbs 14:1. The wisest of women builds her house, but folly with her own hands tears it down. How could somebody have the power to build it up and tear it down? Okay, the choices that you make, right? And your attitude. Who's responsible for the choices that you make? Well, these days a lot of people would say, well, it's not my fault, that choice that I made. But the reality is we're responsible for the choices that we make, right? So the wife has the power to build up, make good choices, or tear down, right? Make bad choices. She can bring honor or disgrace to her husband. Chapter 31, verse 23. Her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. 11:22. Like a gold ring in a pig's snout is a beautiful woman without discretion. Now, here again, some of these comparisons and analogies, they were just over my head. Does somebody want to take a stab at this gold ring in a pig's snout, comparing it to a woman? Let's see. Like a gold ring in a pig's snout is a beautiful woman without discretion. And I did do a little background research on this, but I'm just kind of curious as to what your take on that means. The ring is wasted, a gold ring, okay. It's still a pig. Yeah, it's still a pig. It doesn't matter how you dress it up. It doesn't matter how you adorn it. No matter how beautiful the woman is, if they're not of good character, it's still a pig, right? Still a pig. So that one I had to do a little studying on because I was not really versed in gold rings and pig snouts. But you know why they put a ring in a pig's snout? Well, I didn't read that. But delete it around. And what else? No, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe so. But what I read was that it keeps them from rooting around because they dig with their nose. And I guess if you've got a gold ring in your nose, that would keep them from doing that. But I think that Will was right on as far as what Solomon was referring to here, because to them a pig that's one of the nastiest animals around, right? So there again, choices and responsibility. She can be cooperative or contentious. Chapter 19, verse 13. A foolish son is a ruin to his father, and a wife's quarreling is a continual dripping of rain. I think of that as like a faucet dripping. Like when if you got a little bowl of water in the sink and the faucet just drips. Would that drive anybody else crazy? It would me. Thank you. It would me. 27, chapter 27, 15 and 16. It's the same reference. A continual dripping on a rainy day and a quarrelsome wife are alike. To restrain her is to restrain the wind, or to grasp oil in one's right hand. That doesn't give us much hope, does it, if you've got a quarrelsome wife? But there again, it kind of goes back to what? Choices, right? Choices that you make, being responsible, being accountable for the choices that you make. Okay, so what are some characteristics? Chapter 31, go turn to chapter 31. This was written by King Lemuel, and he is remembering back what his mother told him about trying to find a wife. And I remember hearing this passage a lot of times at a funeral. I've heard this read a lot at a funeral, describing the person that was, gone. And as I was reading it, as I was looking over this lesson, I was reading it, and I was thinking, what a wonderful thing to have these things said about you. I mean, to be able to be called all these things that 31 lists, to be able to be called that, what a wonderful thing that is. So then, and as I read and as I looked down, and I kind of was thinking about my own situation, and I was thinking, check. And I actually did make checks on all these things, and I thought, I'm the luckiest guy in the world, because the woman that I've married has every one of these characteristics. So I called her and told her, because I don't know that I had told her that before. And she said, I don't have time, I'm watching my show. I'm kidding, she didn't say that. But let's see, 31:11. Let's start in 10. Let's just read down through here, and then we'll go back and talk about the different characteristics. An excellent wife who can find? She is far more precious than jewels. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not harm all the days of her life. She seeks wool and flax and works with willing hands. She is like the ships of the merchant. She brings her food from afar. She rises while it is yet night and provides food for her whole household and portions for her maidens. She considers a field and buys it. With the fruit of her hands, she plants a vineyard. She dresses herself with strength and makes her arms strong. She perceives that her merchandise is profitable. Her lamp does not go out at night. She puts her hands to the distaff and holds her hands to the spindle. She opens her hand to the poor and reaches out her hands to the needy. She is not afraid of snow for her household, for all her household are clothed in scarlet. She makes bed coverings for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them. She delivers sashes to the merchants. Strength and dignity, her clothing, and she laughs at the time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. Many women have done excellently, but you surpass them all. This is one of my favorite parts. Charm is deceitful, and beauty is in vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Give her the fruit of your hand and let her works praise her in the gates. So the first thing we see is trustworthiness, right? A wife should be trustworthy. Verse 12, enduring love, practical skills, industrious, compassionate, strong character, speaks words of wisdom and kindness, sees to her family's needs, and I think the most important thing is to fear the Lord, right? Now, if you're a wife, you're probably looking at this list and thinking, at times I'm probably compassionate, but at times maybe I'm not, right? I mean, and I think we could all do that. We could think, I kind of go back and forth, but let this be a good guide to, hey, look, this is something I need to aspire to. But as I was talking to Laura last night, she said, she goes, I mean, she denied having all these characteristics, but one thing she did say that I thought was very interesting, she says, you help me. She goes, I lean on you for a lot of these things. She said, and one of the things that she deals with is worry and anxiety about worry. And I know some of you are that way too. You just worry about everything. Since I had my wreck, if I don't answer the phone when she calls and she gets my voicemail, her mind automatically goes back to that night. So she starts to worry. Am I okay? Is something wrong? So she said that I kind of help her with her list of things. And I think that's what a marriage is, right? It's teamwork. Now, I don't have a list of things that I look at each day and think, let's see, today we're going to work on strong character, right? I mean, it's not that way, is it? You help each other. Because when we get to the list for husbands, I mean, there's tons of stuff that I need to work on, that I need to get better at, that she helps me with. So any comments on wives? Maybe from one of the wives? I mean, you don't have to speak up, but I mean, if you wanted to, feel free. Okay. Oh, thanks, Susan. Yeah. Mm. Mm-hmm. I think you're right. Right. And I agree. I don't think you wake up one morning and think, I'm going to be trustworthy today. Today I'm going to be, because you either are or you're not, right? And I think you bring up a good point is how much easier it is to achieve this list when you have a good example to look at, right? And I think the same thing applies too for us is we need to be thinking about the example that we're setting for our kids, other people's kids, things like that. So even though we may be kind of caught up in our own thing that's going on, we need to realize that other people are watching. I mean, other people are watching us to see how we react, to see how we interact with each other as a couple, as a family, as a husband and wife. So being a good example to those around us, I think, is very important. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And you're right that you want to be remembered in a positive way. And that reputation is not something that happens overnight. I don't think it's something that you can, not saying, hey, I made mistakes in the past, going forward, I'm going to correct these mistakes. I think you can just as easily be remembered for that. But yeah, it is a continual process, a continual learning process, because, I'm sure each of you can think back and think, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I said that. But then moving forward, you correct that, and then, again, you don't know who's watching. You don't know the type of example you'll be for somebody. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. I mean, that's true. I mean, and I don't know, but the time frame would kind of fit, wouldn't it? But yeah, you don't. I mean, and that's the thing too, is that it's never too late until it's too late. So, that's not saying that we're not going to make mistakes or make bad decisions or things like that. It's what you do about them that matters. And that example can be just as strong as somebody who's lived the right way, made the right decisions their whole life, I think. Take a look at David. I mean, you mentioned Bathsheba. David is a great example. I mean, he definitely made mistakes, but he was a man after God's own heart. Anything else? Husbands. Good husbands are rare and hard to find. Who would agree with that? Anybody? I think they are. I think good husbands are very rare. Would the wives all agree? Yeah. Very rare and very hard to find. Proverbs 20, verse 6. Many a man proclaims his own steadfast love, but a faithful man who can find? Solomon recognized that too. Hard to find. But now a husband can obtain favor from God by finding a good wife. Chapter 19, verse 14. House and wealth are inherited from fathers, but a prudent wife is from the Lord. Another one to you. I think it's 18:22. I marked it out. Why did I mark it out? I had one right here, and I think it was even better than that one, but I marked it out. Wait a minute, maybe it's over here. Yeah, 18:22, but it just doesn't like it goes. No, it is. I was reading 18:18. It's 18:22. He who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord. So I can actually obtain favor from the Lord by finding a good wife. Lucky me, right? Or the husband can bring trouble on himself. 11:29. Whoever troubles his own household will inherit the wind, and the fool will be servant to the wise of heart. 27:8. Like a bird that strays from its nest, a man who strays from his home. Oil and perfume make the heart glad, and the sweetness of a friend comes from his earnest counsel. In chapter 5, 21 through 23. The man's ways are before the eyes of the Lord, and ponders all his past. The iniquities of the wicked ensnare him, and he is held fast in the cords of sin. He dies for lack of discipline because of his great folly. He is led astray. So there again we see the importance of choices and accountability, right? Both husband and wife. So some characteristics of a good husband. Go back to 18:22. That not only can you obtain favor from the Lord, but he who finds a wife finds a good thing. So you find something valuable. You have a good wife, you have value. She has value. Chapter 31, verse 31. Give her the fruit of her hands and let her works praise her in the gates. So don't cast a shadow. A good husband is not going to cast a shadow over his wife, right? If she's done something good, let her get the credit for it, right? Good husband's not going to do that. Good husband praises her. Chapter 31, 28 through 29. We read this already. Her children rise up and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. Many women have done excellently, but you surpass them all. I mean, that's something that I don't do near enough. I'll admit it, I don't. I mean, you think of the typical roles that a husband and wife play. You know, the husband works, the wife is at home cooking, cleaning, doing all this stuff. I mean, how often do I say thank you for washing the clothes or loading the dishwasher? Because when I do it, I expect to get thanked, right? I mean, we do, don't we? But then I think about it and I think, well, I mean, I don't expect that. And I really don't. But guys kind of think that way, don't we? It's like when you do something that's not in your wheelhouse, I mean, you cut the grass, whatever. Does she say thanks for cutting the grass? No, because that's my job, right? But I need to say thank you more for stuff that she does that keeps me from having to do it. And then sometimes I do load the dishwasher, not very often. I don't wash clothes. I don't do that, and I can tell you a great story about that. When we first got married, she had a wool sweater that she really loved. It was a nice wool sweater. And I'm not saying that I did it on purpose. It was an accident. But they don't go in the dryer. Wool sweaters don't go in the dryer. So she said right then, she said, let me take care of the laundry. Don't worry about doing the laundry. So, but she noticed that I did it though, right? Because what happened to that wool sweater? Shrunk, and it was gone. So, but I'm not saying that I did it on purpose. So husband trusts his wife, 31:11. He's content with her. Going back to chapter 5, verses 15 through 17. Drink water from your own cistern, flowing water from your own well. Should your springs be scattered abroad, streams, water in the streets, let them be for yourself alone and not for strangers with you. So keep your attention at home, right? That's what a good husband does. And then love her. Love your wife. That's what a good husband does. Ecclesiastes 9:9. Again, this is Solomon. But he has some very wise words here. Ecclesiastes 9, verse 9. Enjoy life with the woman who you love, all the days of your vain life that he has given you under the sun, because that is your portion in life and your toil at which you toil under the sun. Whatever your hands find to do, do it with all your might, for there is no work or thought or knowledge or wisdom to which you are going. Ephesians chapter 5. Verse 25. And it's interesting to me, and I've heard several lessons on just this part of Scripture of how Paul describes the relationship with husbands and wives. And so many people can focus on just a sentence or two and then go off of that. For example, wives, submit to your husbands as to the Lord, and then just stop there. Phillips, you don't stop there, right? I mean, there's more to it, isn't it? There's more to it. So in verse 25, it says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her. I mean, that describes the love that a husband should have for his wife. I mean, there's no greater love, is it? There's no greater love than that. So, I hope I didn't offend or step on too many toes or anything of that nature. But to me, it is the relationship that you have with each other, but more importantly, the relationship that you have with God. And if both of you are on the same page, putting God first, you'll have fewer problems, and the problems that you do have will be easier to get through. That's my philosophy. I don't know if I think that's true. Any more comments? Anything else we want to add before we dismiss? Okay. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate the comments. Jeremy's going to be teaching for me next week, so you'll get a break from me.